September 2008. Lehman Brothers is hours from collapse. Millions of Americans are about to lose their homes. Retirement accounts will be cut in half. The financial world is on fire. But in a quiet boardroom at Goldman Sachs, something very different is happening. Executives aren't panicking. They aren't scrambling. They're calm, focused, because weeks earlier they had done something that their own clients never knew about. They had bet against the very mortgages they sold. They had shorted the market they helped create. And while the world burned, they made billions. This wasn't insider trading. This wasn't illegal. This was something far more powerful. Pattern recognition. They saw what was coming. They moved early. And they positioned themselves to profit from the disaster everyone else walked into blind. And here's what should terrify you. They're doing it again. Right now. The ultra-wealthy are quietly moving their money into very specific assets. Not stocks, not bonds, not the things they tell you to buy. They're hoarding something else entirely. Today, you're going to see exactly what billionaires, central banks, and the global elite buy when they know a collapse is coming. The assets that survived every empire's fall. The playbook used for thousands of years. And why they're making these moves right now in silence, while the rest of us are told everything is fine. Because when the richest people in the world start moving in the same direction, they know something you don't. Let's find out what. When elites prepare for crisis, the first move is always the same. Physical gold. Not gold ETFs. Not mining stocks. Not paper certificates that promise you own gold somewhere in a vault you've never seen. Physical metal that you can hold, move, and control. Why? Because gold is the only asset that has survived every currency collapse, every empire's fall, every financial reset in human history. It can't be printed, can't be inflated, and can't be decreed into existence by politicians. When trust in paper evaporates, gold remains. Look at what's happening right now. Central banks across the world are buying gold at the fastest pace in 50 years. China has been accumulating thousands of tons. Russia converted much of its dollar reserves into gold before sanctions hit. Poland, Hungary, Singapore, all stockpiling physical metal. These aren't random decisions. These are governments preparing for a world where the dollar's dominance is no longer guaranteed. And it's not just nations. Ray Dalio, one of the world's most successful hedge fund managers, has publicly stated that investors should hold gold as a hedge against currency debasement. During periods of instability, he moves significant portions of his portfolio into precious metals. The ultra-wealthy aren't trusting their wealth to digits on a screen. They're converting it into something real. History proves why. In Weimar Germany, those who held physical gold preserved their wealth, while mark holders were wiped out. In the collapse of the Soviet Union, families with hidden gold survived when rubles became worthless. In modern Venezuela, citizens who converted bolivars into gold early escaped the hyperinflation that destroyed everyone else. The lesson is clear. Paper promises fail. Metal endures. And when elites start hoarding physical gold, they're telling you something without saying a word. The second asset elites hoard is land. Specifically, land that produces food. You can't eat gold, but you can't live without food. And whoever controls food production controls survival itself. Bill Gates is now the largest private farmland owner in the United States, with nearly 270,000 acres spread across multiple states. Jeff Bezos has been buying up massive agricultural properties. Foreign nations, China, Saudi Arabia, and others, are purchasing American farmland at record rates. This isn't a coincidence. This is a calculated move by people who understand what becomes valuable when systems break. Throughout history, elites have always controlled land. European nobility derived their power not from money, but from estates that produced food and resources. During the French Revolution, those who owned land outside the chaos survived. During the Great Depression, families with farms could feed themselves while cities starved. In every collapse, land that produces essentials becomes the most valuable asset you can own. Farmland has another advantage. It's a hard asset that generates income. It produces crops, livestock, and resources regardless of what's happening with currencies or stock markets. Inflation destroys cash, but it makes food more expensive, which means farmland becomes more profitable. Elites aren't buying farms for fun. They're buying the means of production in a world where production might be all that matters. And it's not just farms, water rights, timberland, grazing land, anything that controls a fundamental resource. When money fails, the people who control what others need don't just survive, they thrive. Elites don't just diversify their assets, they diversify their geography. When they see instability coming, they acquire property abroad and secure second citizenships in stable, neutral countries. It's not paranoia. It's insurance. New Zealand has become a favorite destination for American billionaires. Peter Thiel, the co-founder of PayPal, famously acquired New Zealand citizenship and purchased property there. Silicon Valley executives have been buying estates in the countryside, far from population centers, with their own water sources and energy systems. Why? Because New Zealand is isolated, politically stable, and far from the likely flashpoints of global conflict. Switzerland has been the traditional safe haven for centuries, neutral, secure, with strong property rights and banking privacy. Uruguay, Portugal, and parts of Southeast Asia have all seen surges in wealthy foreigners buying property and obtaining residency. These aren't vacation homes. These are escape hatches. During World War II, wealthy European families who had secured assets abroad and obtained foreign papers survived. Those who waited too long lost everything. The pattern repeats in every crisis. Mobility is survival. If your wealth and your freedom are tied to one country, you're vulnerable. Elites spread their risk across borders, knowing that if one nation collapses, they have options. You might not be able to afford a compound in New Zealand, but the principle still applies. Geographic diversification, whether through property, stored assets, or even just knowing where you could go, is part of the elite playbook. When borders close and capital controls hit, the people with options are the ones who prepared early. When currency becomes unstable, elites move wealth into portable, tangible assets that hold value across borders and time. Fine art, rare wines, luxury watches, classic cars, rare books, jewelry. These are not just status symbols. They're wealth storage. Why? Because these assets are internationally recognized, easily transported, and hold value independent of any single currency. A Picasso doesn't care if the dollar collapses. A Rolex Daytona doesn't lose value because a government prints money. These items are stores of concentrated wealth that can be moved, hidden, sold, or traded anywhere in the world. Throughout history, this strategy has saved fortunes. When Jews fled Nazi Germany, many carried their wealth not in currency, but in diamonds, gold jewelry, and small valuable items they could smuggle across borders. After the fall of the Soviet Union, oligarchs moved wealth through art and collectibles that could be sold in London, New York, or Geneva. In modern China, wealthy citizens facing capital controls buy rare wines and luxury goods to move value out of the country without triggering government scrutiny. The ultra-rich understand something most people miss. In a crisis, liquidity isn't always about cash. It's about having assets that others will trade for, regardless of what's happening with banks or governments. Collectibles provide that. They're portable wealth in a collapsing world. Elites don't just buy gold and land. They buy control over the resources that power civilization: energy, water, rare minerals, and natural resources. Because in any collapse, whoever controls the essentials controls power itself. The Rockefellers built their empire on oil. The Rothschilds invested heavily in mining and resource extraction. Modern billionaires are doing the same, just with updated methods. Elon Musk controls lithium supply chains for batteries. Investors are buying cobalt mines, rare earth minerals, and uranium deposits. These aren't speculative bets. These are strategic positions in the resources that will be critical, no matter what happens to currencies or governments. Water rights are becoming especially valuable. In the American West, investors and corporations are quietly buying up water rights, knowing that water scarcity will be one of the defining issues of the next century. Whoever controls water controls survival. History teaches this lesson brutally. Rome's elites controlled grain supplies and used food as political leverage. Colonial powers fought wars over spices, sugar, and cotton. Oil has shaped global power for over a century. The pattern is always the same. Control the resources, control the future. When elites move into energy and resource assets, they're not just protecting wealth. They're positioning themselves to maintain power regardless of what political or economic system emerges from the chaos. Here's the move that ordinary people never understand. Elites borrow heavily before inflation and collapse. While everyone else is trying to pay off debt, the wealthy are taking on massive amounts of it. Why? Because they know something most people don't. In hyperinflation, debtors win and savers lose. If you owe $1 million today, and inflation makes that million worth the equivalent of 10,000 tomorrow, you've just been handed a 99% discount. You pay back the loan with worthless currency, and you keep the real assets you bought with that borrowed money. This happened in Weimar, Germany. Smart investors took out mortgages and business loans when marks still had value, then paid them back with wheelbarrows of worthless paper after hyperinflation hit. They effectively bought properties and businesses for free. The people who saved and trusted the currency were wiped out. The people who borrowed strategically became wealthy. The same logic applies today. If you believe inflation is coming, or worse, currency collapse, borrowing at low rates to buy real assets is one of the smartest moves you can make. Real estate, farmland, commodities, anything that holds intrinsic value. The rich understand this. That's why they're leveraged to the hilt while telling everyone else to be financially responsible. It's a dangerous game if you're wrong. But if you're right, debt becomes one of the most powerful wealth-building tools in a collapsing system. The final asset elites hoard isn't physical, it's social capital. Networks, influence, access, and information. In a crisis, who you know and who owes you favors can be more valuable than what you own. Elite clubs, secret societies, Davos gatherings, private councils, these aren't just social events. They're information exchanges. The people in these rooms hear what's coming before it hits the news. They position themselves accordingly, and when systems collapse, they have the connections to navigate the chaos, secure resources, and maintain power. Throughout history, this has been the ultimate insurance. During the fall of the Roman Empire, elites with political and social connections transitioned into the new feudal order. During revolutions, those with relationships on both sides survived. In modern collapses, from the Soviet Union to Argentina, people with networks could access goods, bypass restrictions, and protect their families. Money can be destroyed, assets can be seized. But relationships, influence, and information, those are harder to take away. Elites invest in networks because they know that in true chaos, the people with the right connections are the ones who survive and rebuild. So what's the pattern? When elites see collapse coming, they move into assets that can't be printed, can't be decreed into existence, and can't be destroyed by government policy. Physical gold, land that produces food, foreign property and citizenship, hard portable wealth, control of essential resources, strategic debt that inflation erases, and networks that provide information and access. They don't wait for the news to confirm the crisis. They position early, quietly, and ruthlessly. And by the time ordinary people realize what's happening, the wealthy have already moved. You can't replicate their scale, but you can copy their strategy. Understand what holds value when everything else fails. Diversify not just your assets, but your geography. Build skills and relationships that provide value in any system, and recognize that the rules of the game are different for those who see the patterns before the crowd. History doesn't repeat, but the moves of the wealthy do. And if you pay attention, they're telling you exactly what's coming. If this changed how you see wealth, hit subscribe. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.